Have you ever felt pulled in two directions? One side knows what's right, but the other it's craving something. You can't ignore. That's where I found myself. When my son's best friend Jordan showed up at my door, something changed. It was like a spark couldn't put out. And now I'm left wondering, how far can temptation really take you before it all unravels? Before we get started, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button. It helps me grow and create more stories like this. 4. You please. Your support means a lot. Now let's start with Thestery. It had been the story. Long day, a tiring day. And I was alone in the house again, like I had been for far too long. Son, Alex, was out with his friends, and I was left with the silence that always seemed to echo through the rooms. I hadn't realized just how much I missed human connection until it had been absent for so long since my divorce. It had been just me, my son Alex, and me there. Were moments when I felt like I was okay, like I had it all under control. But the truth was I hadn't been with anyone in a long time. Not since the divorce. I hadn't even been on a date in years, and I missed it. Missed the touch of another person, the feeling of being wanted, of being seen in a way that wasn't tied to me role. As a mother, the surprise that's when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door, surprised to find Jordan standing there, holding a plate of cupcakes. My son's friend Jordan. He was 20. Now a young Mangone was the awkward teenager I remembered. Instead, he was taller, stronger, and surprisingly handsome in a way I hadn't really noticed before. "Hi, Emily," he said with that easy smile of his. "My mom made these, thought you'd like them." I smiled back. Thought. There was a nervous flutter in my chest. "Thanks, Jordan, that's sweet of her." He shifted on his feet, looking at me in a way that made me feel uncomfortable, but not just something else uncomfortable. There was something else, something that made my heart race a little. He was no longer the shy kid, but someone whose gaze seemed to hold weight. His eyes were confident, yet there was something in them that made me feel vulnerable. "Do you want to come in for a bit?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my voice felt like it was betraying. "Measure if you don't mind," he replied, his voice deeper than I remembered. There was a seriousness in his tone that caught me off guard as he stepped inside. I couldn't help but notice how much his presence filled the room. It wasn't just his physical size, it was the way he moved, the confidence in his posture. There was something magnetic about him, something I couldn't ignore. I had always seen him as Alex's friend, but something I couldn't ignore now. Now it was different, and I wasn't sure if I liked it or if I was terrified by it. I made us both tea, trying to distract myself from the way his eyes kept following me. The tension in the air was palpable, like something was waiting to be said. But neither of us knew how to break the silence. Every time I glanced up, I caught him watching me. Really, watching me. His gaze lingered just a little too long on my lips when I spoke, or on my hands when I moved them to just my cup. I tried to ignore it, but the heat of his attention made me feel alive, more live than I had felt in a long time. We talked about nothing, and more alive than I had felt, particular at first small talk that didn't matter, but with every word, I felt the weight of his gaze, and it was impossible not to notice how he seemed to be studying me, noticing things about me that I wasn't used to having noticed. He wasn't the awkward kid anymore. He was a man, and there was something about him that drew me in. It tried not to think about it, tried to ignore the way my heart was racing, the way my breath was shallow when I looked up and met his eyes. But it was impossible. Every time I spoke, I could feel him listening to me in a way that was different than before. I didn't want to admit it, but I noticed how attractive he had become, his jawline strong and defined, the way his dark hair fell perfectly over his forehead, just a little messy in that effortless way. The way his broad shoulders filled out, his shirt making him look so masculine. And it wasn't just his physical appearance that had changed, it was something deeper, something deeper, something magnetic. As we continued toe talk, I leaned closer. His hand brushed against mine as he reached for his cup. The touch, brief but electric. My heart stuttered, and for a moment I couldn't. Breathe the air between us felt charid heavy, with something unspoken. Something that neither of us had addressed, but that neither of us could deny anymore. "You know," Jordan said, quietly, his voice low and intense. "I've always thought you were beautiful, Emily. But lately there's something about you. Something more." I felt my cheeks flushed, my throat dry. "Jordan, please, you shouldn't, but you're different." Smiled that same, knowing smile that made my heart beat faster. "I'm serious, you're different now. You've always been beautiful, but now, you're more than that. There's something about you that I can't stop thinking about." I swallowed hard, the words stumbling in my mind, but I couldn't speak. Then I should have told him that this wasn't right. He was Alex's friend, and I had to respect that. But Ash's gaze held mine. Something inside me started to unravel. My mind screamed at me to stop, but my body was reacting to him in ways I hadn't felt. In so long, his gaze dropped to my lips, and before I could stop myself, I leaned, enclosing the distance between us, and then he kissed me. I felt wanted. Wasn't slow, it wasn't gentle, it was urgent, desperate. As though we both knew that something had shifted between us. I felt his hands on my back, pulling me closer, his mouth hot and demanding. Against my mind, I let myself sink into the feeling of him, into the touch, the heat that had been building between us for so long. His hands slid down to my waist, fingers lingering on my skin. I didn't pull away. I didn't want to. For the first time in so long, I felt one had seen alive. I told myself that it should stop, that this wasn't right. But in that moment, I couldn't pull away. But then, just as suddenly as the desire had surged, reality came crashing in. This was wrong. It was so. This was wrong. Wrong. The guilt hit me like a cold wave, and I pulled away sharply, my breath ragged, my heart pounding in my chest. "What are we doing?" I asked, my voice shaky, barely, above a whisper. "Jordan, this can't happen." He looked at me, confusion and desire swirling in his eyes. "But I want this. Emily. I want you. I've wanted you for so long." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. But I couldn't let myself fall into them. I couldn't. I was Alex's mother. This wasn't right. "No," I said more firmly, my voice trembling with a resolve I didn't know. You need to go. Now." I stood up, taking a step back from him, my hands trembling. I could see the hurt in his eyes, the confusion, but I couldn't let it happen. "Not like this." Jordan stood up slowly, his expression unreadable. "I won't forget this, Emily," he said softly, before turning and walking toward the door. The finality of them echoed in the silence as he left. I sank back onto the couch, my head in my hands. What had just happened? How close had I come to losing control, to doing something that could never be undone? Knew deep down that this wasn't over the attraction. The tension, it wasn't gone, and that scared me more than anything. When desire takes over and get crossed, how do you find your way back? What happens when you're faced with choices that challenge everything you've built? Drop your thoughts below. Let's discuss the moments where temptation meets hesitation and the consequences that follow if you're captivated by stories of forbidden tension and tough decision. Subscribe, like, and turn on notifications for more. Until next time. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't knowing what you want. It's deciding what to do with it.